Hi everyone, welcome and thank you so much for joining us for our webinar. We will be having 30 minutes of a presentation and then it'll be followed by 30 minutes of a Q&A. During the Q&A, feel free to use the chat feature in Zoom and we will be fielding your questions that way via the chat. So we're going to introduce ourselves briefly. I'm Shay. I'm the trend forecaster here at CID, and I am here with Alana Call.
Yep, I'm sure I know quite a few of you. I am the Assistant Creative Director and Storyteller here at CID. We're super excited to give everyone kind of a brief overview of some of the amazing work that we've been putting together and some of the future we're forecasting and get us all ready to design for the best future. Shay, you want to take it away?
Yes. So you all received the full version of our forecast via the web link that we sent out. Today we're only going to be doing a 30-minute presentation, so this presentation is a bit edited down just for presentation purposes. So if you have any questions or you feel that anything is missing, please refer back to the web link with the full presentation. And then we will begin. So as always, we strive to design to engage, elevate, and endure. We separate our forecast into these three sections to make sure that we are truly sharing information that hits each of these points. So to begin, in our engage section, we will be talking about designing for our market. We'll begin with our lifestyle segments. The first one that we're going to talk about today is students. And students is really all about Gen Z as students. We have a really impactful stat that 78% of students said that the availability of high-quality student housing actually affected their college or university selection. This group is just really unique. We've been tracking Gen Z for a while, and then tracking them also through the lens of students has been really interesting.
Absolutely. It's a really different demographic than what we've seen with millennials and kind of the predecessors before that. It's a really interesting group where they're very kind of conscious of the world and conscious of their impact. But also, with the drive of social media, it changes so much in the way that people kind of participate and interact with one another. So, we're always trying to find ways to make it still really engaging while we're answering to that demographic. And as we move forward in design, we're going to start to see this demographic really move forward and fill up all of those apartment spaces or those multifamily units.
So taking a look now, these are the top 5 ways that we have identified to design for these students. So walking through them quickly, we have healthy living, technology, sustainability, micro units, and connectivity. So if we dive further into each one and start with healthy living, we have done so much research and we have found that these students have actually grown up in this whole wellness craze. So they have just a deep understanding of health and wellness, and they expect to carry that through into their university days. Ways we can design for this is having a really great workout, fitness zones, things that feature mindfulness and connectivity, recovery tech, a way to recover from workouts, a way to recover from the stress of everyday life being a student, and a focus on healthy food. Technology, we know how important that is to Generation Z. Ways we can incorporate this into units, things like keyless entry, app and button managed services, and then alternatively, even technology-free zones to give this tech-savvy and really tech-saturated generation a bit of a break.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really interesting, and we explored a little bit more as we get a bit deeper into the forecast, but just the idea of kind of what is the antithesis to that? We're designing for so much technology, but we still want to make sure that we're creating spaces that are really, really, really engaging. So by studying this market and really understanding, what it is they're seeking and the sort of social interaction that they appreciate, it really allows us to create those kind of inspired spaces. Next, we have sustainability. 47% of Gen Z would pay more for a sustainable product, and there was actually in New York City, they did a study, and they had where essentially it was a completely eco-centric project where everything was grown on campus, everything was kind of made there, and the way that the Gen Z took care of it and the way it just supported itself, it was really something unique and really kind of beautiful. So some of the things we do here, we love the idea of reclaimed materials. People love things that have some sort of story to them, some sort of root. The idea of a gray water system, low VOC components, natural lighting, circadian lighting, renewable energy. We've seen a few things where it's like a pedal pusher for your coffee maker or ice cream. So it's just fun little things that we can do as well. The electric car charging, the scooter share, recycling and composting, energy efficient green spaces, also some of the zero waste things we're really seeing, where there's actually Joyfill out in Denver where it's, we have these big industrial size. You have your dishwashing detergent, your laundry detergent, and you just refill a reusable container and take it home with you. So again, it's just the idea of keeping that economy central.
And it's exciting to see how this generation is really driving that throughout all industries as well, which we're definitely tracking, and you'll see some examples later on in today's webinar. So also number 4, we have micro units. We know that student housing units are typically smaller, and we find that with this generation, they really value privacy, so they don't mind having roommates as long as they have their own sleeping space that can be closed off. But they're happy to. They enjoy being together, so having a lot of study spaces and communal spaces outside of the unit is super important. They're happy to, share a gym, a fitness center, pool, gaming, being together in these outside spaces, but they do value having a private space to retreat back to.
As a former New Yorker, I'm sure you can appreciate that private sleeping space.
Yes, that's true. That is true.
And then last, we've got connectivity. Students want to feel connected to their university, their city, and their home away from home. One of the things that we see that is really kind of a commonality between a lot of the work we do is we see a lot of transplants. When we have new businesses booming, new things popping up, people from different areas all end up coming together to one space, and they may not know the area, they may not know the people. So it's really our job to help create that community, to help foster that neighborhood identity. Whatever it may be, maybe it's, enforcing that local story. Maybe we're partnering with the local community. Maybe there's, all sorts of different things where we're partnering outside of ourselves, so we're really helping everyone to really, deeply root themselves into the area. All righty, the new now family.
The new now family. So this segment was a fun one to target and research, but really what this segment is all about is what do today's families look like and how they're constantly changing. So we have here, if you read through, a family can be couples with kids, couples without kids, singles with kids, roommates, people who have pets and they're truly pet parents, or we even put on here plant parents. We're seeing
it's a thing. I mean, plant parents are a thing.
It's a real thing. So this is just all about people in flux. They're settled to be unsettled, and how we can design flexible and multi-purpose spaces that suits people now and as they change. So you'll see the top 5 here: multi-purpose spaces, leasable space, equipment share, home sharing, and friends. Many of these items are about flexibility. So number 1, multi-purpose spaces. Design spaces that have at least 2 dedicated functions. This makes sure that there's constant engagement and vibrancy in that space, and it increases resident reach, so you can make sure that you have something for everyone.
Absolutely, and I think, this is something that we do at our core, but making sure that we're never designing a space that isn't there to be animated or activated. So if you have the greenhouse, you could also use it as an event space. Your private dining room could also be a conference room. So really making sure that we're understanding that nothing anymore can be one single use, because people are so different and the way we interact is so different. So we always like to think about that, even down to our merchandising and the way we're amenitizing our spaces. Next is leasable space. We want to create spaces for all kinds of family to gather and live as needed. Again, this kind of ties right back into the multi-purpose spaces. Maybe you have a leasable garden plot, maybe you have a guest unit, a space for events. We have a few properties where where we've got a lot of residents who, okay, you may be a downsizer, you may not have a lot of space, but you still want to host Christmas or Thanksgiving or an engagement party, so you can lease an upper floor, a solarium, one of those rooftop deck spaces so that it's usable. So again, we may not have the square footage in our unit, but we are giving our residents, our future residents, a space to do those things. And it's a really nice thing to be able to have because it still feels like your home. It has that whole kind of really good feeling.
Absolutely. And then speaking back to what Alana was saying specifically about unit size, we all know that units are getting smaller and storage is an issue for some people. So we've really been embracing this idea of the sharing economy through the idea of an equipment share. And this really addresses that families have different needs at different times. These community shares help residents access these items that they may only need to use once or twice and don't want to give up that valuable storage space within their unit. So this can be things like kitchen equipment, tools, even having a property truck or a car, bulk grocery supplies like rice and flour, very basic things, office supplies that you don't want to have. We know about the printer, but something like a shredder that you don't even think about until you need it. And then even wellness items and fitness equipment that can be shared and taken into your unit to use a few times and then returned. It's a really exciting innovation. People are willing to own less and share more, and it's fun to track and see.
And then you get to experience so many more things
Absolutely.
too, because you may not be able to afford the Normatec recovery technology, but you can borrow it from where you live, and you just get so many more experiences. It's something that it toes the line between also being experiential and opening things that people who may not be able to appreciate it get a new opportunity to do it.
Absolutely. And then number 4, we're talking about home sharing. We know that this is a controversial topic, allowing the residents to rent their homes. However, this does provide flexibility for changing situations. When we're talking specifically about this new now family, if you have roommates that are coming and going, you need to rent out a room to make the rent because you are in a breakup, or you are able to travel for a few months and you want to definitely keep your lease, but you're able to rent it out for a few months while you're traveling. It's something that offers flexibility, and we're seeing that more and more of these lifestyle segments are valuing flexibility.
And it also helps to retain residents. A terrible example is, if you live with your partner and unfortunately you break up, you're living on your own, you may not be able to afford the rent, well, we may lose that resident. They always paid everything on time, they're super, super clean, they really take care of their unit, but if they can't afford it on their own, we may end up losing them. So having the ability to have this home sharing, it's just something that really allows for a little bit more flexibility for our residents. And like Shay said, being thoughtful about how we're designing for it, a lockable owner's closet, the wayfinding being really smart, background check software, so we're making sure that it's not party central.
Absolutely. And then number 5 is friends. We say that adults of all ages need help making friends. We know how hard it can be to actually make friends as an adult, especially if you are a transplant, like Alana mentioned earlier, and we're designing spaces in cities that are very heavy on transplants. So this idea is all about designing spaces that can double as almost an icebreaker, places that force interaction and get the conversation flowing, and that helps to build a community, which then helps people feel like they live in a space that they want to continue to rent out. We know how important it is for retention.
Exactly. When you get to know your residents and you start to meet like-minded people, you feel so much more comfortable, and it really helps to foster that feeling that you're home and this is where you belong. So everything from just a puzzle sitting on a table, or you have conversation starters anywhere, or something that only works when 2 people are doing it, being really, really thoughtful about it, or even social media moments and things like that, where it just gives people the opportunity to be part of that narrative and experience.
Our next segment that we focus on is downsizers. We all know the importance of this group. We know that they're renting by choice. We know that they're, in some situations, looking at renting multifamily as an alternative to a retirement community. We really focus in the top 5 of ways to design for this very specific group.
Absolutely.
So we know that unit size is important. Those downsizing are coming from homes that may have 4+ bedrooms. And then that goes right to number 2, which is storage. You're downsizing from a home, and so you want to be able to keep those things that are truly your prized possessions. So we talk about ways here to design with useful built-ins, galley sinks, really smart ways to increase your storage in a small footprint. Then number 3 is gathering. It's still important to have your home be a gathering place for your friends and family. You're used to hosting in a home, So what are ways that we can still provide that experience for those downsizing, like having a really great demonstration kitchen. We talked about reservable, leasable spaces previously, but this is super important for this group as well, to host parties, family dinners, holidays. And then we talked about even the idea of a leasable guest unit as a way to accommodate people to stay with you when you are living in a smaller home. And then easy living, this is all about convenience. Living in a walkable urban environment, having a proximity to shops and restaurants. We really see that this downsizing group is one of the reasons that they are moving is to live in these urban walkable areas. They're ready for a change. They're ready to kind of leave the suburbs and be somewhere that's a little bit more urban and vibrant.
Yeah, really speaking art and culture. So this one also really ties into kind of, bringing in some of that local, as well as kind of that concierge idea too, where we say that life delivered. So we may not be in the most urban area, but what can we do as designers that we're making sure that our residents have everything they may want or everything they may need, where convenience ends up becoming this really cool luxury. And last, we have design, where downsizers have spent years customizing and caring for their own homes. I'm sure quite a few of us on the call have been lucky enough to, go through a renovation or design their own home. So you have this really personal thing that you've created, so you're going to expect quality and you want it to look really nice. So here's where we come back as designers, and we're making sure that, we're really putting thought and time into these units and how we're designing them and the level of finish in those packages. Perhaps it is customizable. Perhaps we do have a little bit of flexibility. Maybe we do have upgraded appliances, a fireplace, a really nice soaking tub, unique lighting, and, thoughtful, even down to the hardware or the door pieces. Being really, really thoughtful about it so that it doesn't just feel like, oh, they're moving into an apartment. No, they're moving into like a luxury living. This is downsizing. And it feels cool.
And finally, we discuss our blended lifestyle segment. This is all about the fact that so many people in different demographic groups are all living together in one multifamily community, which is really fun. It's exciting to have that challenge to design for so many different types of people. So this segment is really about focusing on what are the top 5 things and ways to design for everyone. What are the top 5 things that are most important to everyone? So we have well-being, pet parents, automated living, flex work, and retail. And we really wanted to focus on, again, just what is the most important thing to everyone and how can we design for each attribute.
Absolutely. And I think the well-being being our first one, and I think I kind of shot myself in the foot there, but the idea of wellness is so much more than that. It's now well-being, and it's including self-care, fitness, recovery time in nature. We are spending so much time at our desks working, as we've got up here, the flex work, we're working from home, we're working from bed, some of us, maybe in the kitchen, who knows, but giving people that kind of, that remedy, that break from it. So, maybe it's massages, maybe it's a remedy bar, maybe it's like a digital detox room or light therapy or meditation pods, any of these sort of things that start to think outside of the box that are kind of that counterbalance and really let our residents know we're aware and we're going to take care of you. Next, we have our pet parents. I think this is probably one of my favorite ones because I can relate. The picture of the American family is constantly changing. Dogs and cats are valued members of the pack. And as fellow doggy moms, I mean, I feel like we totally get this one. But something that I think we really love the idea of, and is the idea of, if we're creating these flex workspaces, how cool would it be if like 1 or 2 of these little micro offices was dog friendly or cat friendly? Obviously cats are a little bit harder to wrangle than dogs. They may not listen, or we do partnerships with local pet services, Pets of the Month. We've seen some of our properties do that, and it's always so fun because residents get to feel like they're part of it, and again, they're like proud little parents. Indoor pet relief, elevated dog parks, but really kind of thinking outside the box. Shay and I were actually talking a few weeks ago about doing like a photo booth for dogs and giving them costumes and all sorts of funny things. We really go there. We really do. We do. I'm gonna let you take automated living. Have fun with that.
All right, we'll give a lot of breaks. So automated living, this is really about convenience. We all know that everyone is so time poor. What are ways that we can do to support residents to give them back that time, that valuable resource? So convenience is a top priority. Dry cleaning services. Is there a hotel-style cleaning service you can offer so that there's a way for a service to just go into your unit and do a quick clean? Of course, we know about dog walking and pet care. Even having a feature like on-site daycare. package concierge. We talk a little bit more about this later, so I'll skip past that. And we just know about the importance of grocery delivery, and there's even alcohol delivery services now.
I think that's my favorite.
Yes. So we just need to keep in mind these ideas as we're designing spaces to accommodate this automated living and where we're going to see that cycle continue.
Absolutely. And like we mentioned before with the flex work, 70% of workers globally work from home at least one day per week, and that statistic is only growing.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we're, not only are we doing that whole co-working space, but we're really integrating throughout the entire project spaces where residents can kind of work. Maybe it's something as cool in the fitness areas, doing like the treadmill bike, the treadmill deck. That's a real good workout. Or it's office equipment share, or it's an on-site cafe, or outside we have, you know, your kind of outdoor chargers, but being really, really thoughtful about it. So it's not just that we're creating an office anymore. You know, we're not seeing those business centers as much as we used to.
Right.
It's much, much bigger.
Integrated spaces to work throughout.
And then we have our retail, and as we say here, retail is not dead. It's just taking a new form. Injecting retail into or near multifamily space brings vibrancy and engagement. And the other thing it does is it really helps us to feel connected to the local, and it helps to kind of soften that connectivity. When we've got a new project coming up in there, inviting some of the local businesses in there and saying, like, here, you guys can come in here, sell your stuff. It just shows that we're really supporting that local retail and making it so vibrant. So again, we have on-site retail pop-ups, an on-site cafe, maybe it's grocery delivery, maybe we have a really cool bodega, boutique fitness, a pet store, restaurant, or all sorts of kind of cool little unique pop-ups. You know, we have hand makers and things like that, but there's so many different ideas that we kind of love to think about that, and we really feel like this is something that's super strong for this market.
Absolutely. Next, we're going to discuss new arrival experiences. So this specifically in the context of leasing. So here we're all about coming up with new ways to create engaging leasing experiences, whether that's through a retail front, like we were talking about before, something where you feel like you're not walking into a stuffy office. You can feel the vibrance of the community. Perhaps there's a way to inject the public, so it's a public/private space, so there's always something going on, it's always buzzing.
Absolutely.
And you just feel like you're part of a community the second that you walk through the door.
Absolutely. We're kind of moving past the idea of just creating these lobby spaces, these vestibules, these foyers, these waiting areas. You know, that's really important square footage and really important space that we want to amenitize. So like Shay said, maybe it's a cafe, and it, you know, your barista is actually your leasing agent, and now you know your leasing agent, and you're friends with your leasing agent, and your leasing agent kind of knows what's going on, and we've got this kind of fun little ask me about pin up in the corner, but we love the idea of, you know, maybe the leasing agent wears something that says like what they're passionate about. Like for me, I'm super passionate about Star Wars. You may not know that, but if you just meet me and you want to come up here and be like, so who shot first? Was it Han or Greedo? I'm going to be like, I got a whole lot to tell you. But it's really kind of a fun way. Exactly. Like it's all about icebreakers. And as we saw with some of those other demographics and some of the, you know, top 5 ways we're designing for these segments of people, that idea of community and connectivity is so important. And again, this is a way that we can design for that, which is super fun.
Really exciting.
Alrighty, so next we're going on to Elevate and making it unique.
Going on to Elevate. So here we're going to discuss macro trends. These trends here they're really, when we go to the next slide you'll see, but they're 5 overarching themes. These are themes that we're tracking, and we're making sure that we're designing for them in order to really address what's happening in the world. So the top 5, and we'll skim over this because we're going to go into depth on each of the 5 next, but number 1 is well-being. We did touch on this a little bit, but we're going to go a little bit more in depth. 2, life delivered. This is just all about that convenience and what we're really getting truly delivered to our doorstep. Number 3, sharing economy. We're going to go a little more in depth on that. 4 is the age of we. This is all about creating brands that give back and creating a community around that, around a do-good initiative, and really about how people are so willing to support a brand that has some sort of give-back component. And then 5, we're going to touch on the loneliness epidemic. This is about how we're living by ourselves, we're connected into our devices, we're working so much, how we're losing a little bit of that community, but we are going to address a way to bring more of that back through design.
Alrighty, well-being.
So Alana touched on this previously, but really it's all about we're not quite seeing that wellness anymore. It's all about the holistic well-being. This is about engaging the mind, the body, and the spirit, and ways that we've touched on. Alana mentioned it before, but these kind of like relaxation pods. We're seeing light therapy, of course, yoga, cupping and massage, sauna, even through sound and like a sound garden. Having, I mean, this is a little more extreme, but like we're seeing it happening. These vitamin IV, like rejuvenation treatments, foot baths, and a remedy bar. We actually have one in our office.
We
a little remedy bar where you can go if you have a little bit of a cold or something coming on, and you can.
Or you're a little nervous. Not to say Shay and I may not have been doing some of those remedies to help us do this, but again, it's something that's really cool. It's unique and it's different, and it's just one of those really memorable features that residents are really going to respond well to. And again, just in following up with that, looking at some really new and unique fitness and making sure that we're really kind of being at the forefront of that. So the virtual workouts, I'm sure all of us by this point have heard of the Mirror. That's a big one. Tonal is another big one, your Peloton, your City Row. But essentially, it's bringing that luxury and that convenience of a personal trainer right to you, which is really, really amazing because it's all so integrated, and it's, you don't need a trainer anymore for wellness.
Right.
It's right in there.
Right. This is a really exciting new kind of component in fitness that we've been tracking, but it's cognitive workouts. So this really ties in the idea of well-being because you're combining working out your mind with working out your body. And this is a great option too because it spans generations. You can be a kid and it's just fun to hit the light and jump around, and this is great for our senior audience as well to make sure that you're really working out your mind and the workout is gentle enough to, span from child to senior. So really exciting.
Absolutely.
New innovation fitness. Our next trend, life delivered. This is all about, we all know about Amazon. We know what's happening with Amazon, but we're actually seeing an even bigger shift on top of that in the way that people are engaging in shopping and in purchasing items. So, for example, clothing rental has become a huge trend. Rent the Runway is one of the most familiar ones, but more and more are popping up. So people are receiving, instead of going out shopping, they're receiving clothes to their home, and then they're actually sending them back. So there's that component, too, to consider. People are receiving things, but they're also sending things out. Another example of that is this Loop. It is a service that sends you household goods and some food items in reusable containers, so it's part of the Zero Waste Initiative. When you're done with the container, for example, they have, you'll see the Haagen-Dazs, but they also have laundry detergent, soap, things like that. So when you're done with your Tide container, you actually send the container back. So this is something else that's coming in and it's going out. And then food delivery, we're seeing innovations constantly with Uber Eats and all of the rest. So it's really interesting to track and watch what people are getting delivered to their doorstep.
And to make sure that in our post and parcel spaces that we're really allotting the proper amount of square footage to these sorts of things. Do we have refrigerated storage? How is the package working? Is there a package concierge? Do we have a room? Are we doing a Luxor room? But being really, really conscious of it because this is something we are predicting. The one thing we always hear is, we've got so many packages, where do they go? And this is just something we're predicting growing kind of at an exponential rate.
Yes. For sure. So one solution to this is we talk about this idea. This is very conceptual, but the idea of possibly having an entry vestibule within the unit. So there will be an exterior door and then a small vestibule and then the door to your actual unit. So this would be something that would potentially allow for a secure delivery so that you don't have people or even things like we see the delivery bots now that are handling potentially last mile delivery. There's a space for them to drop the goods. Your product is still secure, but they're not in your home. So we're just always thinking about ways that we can design outside the package room what's next.
Absolutely.
And then here we have the future of life delivery, as we call it, but we're really seeing these things popping up, like perhaps, again, this is very conceptual, but there are these drawings, like Amazon may have these Zephyr little mini warehouses that are floating above our cities. Drones would go back and forth between the Zephyr and your home or your unit. So are we having drone landing docks? We're also seeing these vehicles like in the top left corner, but they kind of straddle that area between they're on kind of a pedestrian path, they're not quite on the street, they're handling last mile delivery. How are we going to design to allow for these kind of bots and drones to really deliver and access our properties in the future? So it's exciting to think about. And then here we have Fetch. This is just it's an interesting solution to this package problem that I know we're constantly looking for new solutions to. So what Fetch does is they allow residents to have their packages actually sent to the Fetch warehouse. Then the Fetch courier actually delivers it to their unit, right to their door. And there is an app that residents would have access to, and they can actually control their preferences for delivery time, if they need to actually physically be there to receive it. It's really interesting, but this is just a reminder that there are these third-party solutions out there. So for every problem that, or every kind of barrier
everything that may
see,
pop up, there's a really,
there's a really cool, innovative solution, and Fetch is just one example of that.
There's someone out there who's willing to fix
Yeah,
it.
Absolutely.
And then we've got our Age of We, the Do Good Collective, and create a purpose-driven brand. So again, I'm going to let Shay really talk into this one, but something we really love, the idea is we want to make sure that we're creating things that are really, really meaningful, and we're not just going in and building these, you know, crazy, beautiful high-rises. We want them to be thoughtful, and we also want them to be good for the community, because then they're really well received. It's got a great reputation. Everybody loves it. So something as small as the little free pantry, maybe it's something we leave right outside. Residents can donate their canned goods right there, and people who are in need can just go grab it. We've seen that with book drops or anything like that, or even clothing donations. Maybe it's something that you collect it all. I mean, I think our office is doing it right now, but we, you know, kind of make a collective haul of all sorts of different things, you know, to kind of give back, but really making that part of our brand really helps to build the community, you know, around you.
And going off of what Alana said, it's becoming more and more important to consumers that they're supporting these brands and these businesses that have a purpose. So again, just some ideas and ways to incorporate that. Having a retail component where a percentage of the profits goes to support a local cause. Becoming a safe place where neighborhood kids in the neighborhood and youth know that it's a place they can go to get help if something happens. Having a unit that's perhaps dedicated for an artist in residence program or to support a veteran family. Even having a rooftop garden. These are really cool ways that give a little bit of a purpose to your brand, which just helps to, again, tie in the community and tie in something local.
Absolutely. It could be something as little as if we have a vending machine for dog treats and it's 25 cents, every quarter we collect is ended up donating to the local animal shelter. So again, it doesn't have to be a super big cost, but it is a huge, huge impact.
And then sharing economy, we touched on this a bit earlier, but we're just seeing, everyone knows kind of where we're going with the sharing economy. People have, units are smaller, people are actually willing to partake. We've seen, you know, the success in, just to use the most basic one as an example, but Uber, people are happy to share. So we're really trying to think of new ways to bring this sharing economy idea into our projects. So some kind of different ideas are, we're seeing plant swaps, which is a really cool, easy way to bring some fun sharing economy programming in.
No one would want me to swap because I would kill your plant.
Yes, I have to keep a lot of plants.
But I could do the closet swap. That would be a fun one.
Yes, closet swap is really fun. It's just a fun, engaging way to tie in community, tie in sharing.
And it helps you to meet your residents too, you know? Like if you have a yard sale within your community and everyone kind of brings your things and you're just trading, it helps to create this really cool circular economy, but also you're getting to know your residents, you're getting to know your economy. You know, it's just something it's nice to share.
It is. And there's ties into sustainability as well. So we're seeing retailers having these, for example, instead of using a usable to-go cup from a coffee shop, you can use a reusable to-go cup where you kind of sign up, you're in this program, and you use it and you bring it back or you drop it in a designated drop zone. And so it's preventing waste, you're sharing cups. We're seeing it too with to-go food containers like the bottom right. So you're getting your Uber Eats delivered, but you can actually, when you're done, you can take that container back to the restaurant and they'll use it again. So it has a sustainability component too, which is exciting to see that kind of being woven into this sharing economy idea. And then this is a really fun example. We wanted to spotlight something that was a little out of the box, but this is a company called Social Studies. They're actually a rental service for place settings, dishes, flatware. So if you're hosting a dinner party and you don't have a setting for, 8 people because you're living in a small unit and
this is
you don't have the
perfect for those
storage.
downsizers. If they're,
It's perfect.
they're hosting an event and they don't have, they're willing to spend the money on whatever it would be, you want all of your beautiful place settings, your beautiful tablescapes. Social studies will do that. You'll invite them in, they'll set it all up, they'll clean it all up. So it's just something really cool that, it's a potential partnership that you could leverage as they grow. But there, again, it goes back to support what Shay said, that there are so many companies out there, and we love researching and seeing what they are and helping to create these partnerships, because it is such a wonderful convenience, because you don't have to own 30 spode Christmas dishes. Like I'm currently struggling. But you can just rent it, and it's easier. It's so much better for the environment, and it's also a much easier cleanup, and you don't have the storage issue with it too.
Yeah, and this is a great solution for operations too, for full community events as well.
Absolutely.
So just another, like Alana said, another third-party solution that you can look outside for. And then here we have the idea of home sharing. We did touch on this a bit earlier, but we're really just seeing more and more of these apartment hotel operations finding success. We're really interested in the idea of potentially designating like an area, a corridor, perhaps a building, depending on the layout, of select units that could be rented out. If they do have a full-time resident, perhaps there's a way to really smartly design a owner's closet, so that if you are on the lease and you're only renting out sometimes, you can lock away your items that are personal and you don't want to get mixed up in renters. So we're always just thinking of ways to really tie in this home sharing. We know that there's a lot of things to solve for here, but we think that just looking at the success that it's having so far and the way the industry is going.
And I feel like we were kind of talking about this earlier, but we have so many people now who, because they have the ability to work remotely and work from home, they're traveling a lot more. You may take 3 months here, you may take 3 months there. So, no one's sitting in your unit. Maybe we charge that unit a premium. There's a premium to kind of live in that unit. But then they also have the ability to kind of rent it out while they're not there. So, it's kind of helping us both out in the long end. And then, like Shay said, even if it's just in a small kind of certain section, maybe it's just one floor, one corridor, one building.
One designated area. So you still have your core community that, we know we're working so hard to build community. And then you have a little bit of...
vibrancy.
Where you have
a little spice.
Some travelers, some people in and out. Yeah, exactly.
And
so
it's great.
Still have your core.
And it's great in areas, too, where you have a lot of... for example, I know Orlando is one of the areas where you have people who are traveling and they may only be working there for a few months. So it also helps some of that corporate housing problem that we start to see pop up in some of these areas.
And then here we're going to discuss a bit the loneliness epidemic. So I'm going to read this statistic to you, but more than 2 in 10 adults in the United States say they always or often feel lonely, lack of companionship, or feel left out or isolated. So we see it as our job to design spaces that are really engaging and bring people together naturally, whether that's through furniture, that's forcing interaction, having really cool programming like a supper club. We've talked about the idea of having a really cool laundromat. Like, what are ways that people used to meet in the past? Having like a nostalgic laundromat on site. Of course, you'd still have laundry in unit, but something maybe for those oversized items, and having like those really chance interactions.
Yeah, and again, we've
games
got
on tables.
Games on tables sitting there. We've got, there's also the idea, and the Moxie does this really well, but you can partner with social media platforms. They do this with Bumble, and then you host meetups, so then everyone kind of gets to go and meet each other. Because the idea is you want people to be happy. You want them to enjoy where they live. It makes everything better globally, but it also makes the experience of being at the unit and living at the property so much more impactful. And you never know what you can create. Who knows what's going to happen in the laundry?
Who knows? We don't know. We just designed it, so we don't know what happens. So we've talked about retail a little bit earlier, but just going more in depth with some examples. This store, Jack and Jack, it's actually a coffee shop, it's a barber shop, it's a beauty parlor, it's a nail salon, and we just love the way that having all of those mashed up ideas, mashed up retail concepts really creates a vibrant place in the community that draws so many different people.
Yeah, it's awesome. We actually were able to kind of tour this, and what was so cool is there were so many different people in there. You had, your dudes going and getting their custom barber cuts. You had women going in the back getting their nails done.
Yeah.
But it just brought everyone together in this one space, and it ended up being this really cool, almost icon place that everyone knows about Jack and Jack. Everybody's got to stop by Jack and Jack. So it's just really cool, the idea of retail mashup. And again, this is pulling that whole concept of no single-use space, making things really, really flexible. It's just a successful way to kind of, look forward for design.
And then this was a really cool example at Five Below. It's just an example of an unexpected retail play and something that we can draw inspiration from. So what they're doing is Five Below is partnering with a gaming, so like an esports video game facility, and they're actually bringing gaming into the stores. So these gaming competitions are so huge. They're bringing these kind of almost competition facilities into Five Below to draw people in, make it a place to stay and hang out. They're going to be selling snacks and drinks. So it's almost becoming a little bit of a community hub for this esport gaming community. So just a really cool example of a way that a retailer is bringing something in really unexpected and programming it, and it's going to be really exciting to see.
Absolutely. And I think, when we think about some of our clubroom spaces, some of our gaming spaces, if we really invest in, big TVs and really cool lounge seating and things like that, perhaps we host, I don't know, any video games. Legos, I feel like, is not a video game.
Fortnite.
Maybe we host like a Fortnite night. That's probably wrong. But maybe we do something like that, and you invite people from outside the community to kind of come in and participate in that. And then you have so many new people who are coming in and meeting, and it's also revenue generating, and it helps to just kind of build brand awareness.
And then our third section, Indoor, Designed to Last. Here we're going to talk about influence. So this is all about, we draw inspiration from fashion. We look at what's happening globally. We check in on color and material. And we look at what is happening, what are these big global movements that are driving everything. So we're going to talk through each one in a bit more detail, starting with fashion.
So Shay's pointing to me. You guys can't see that.
Alana told me that she could talk about this for 9 hours. So
the really cool thing about the way we look at fashion is fashion doesn't really have any sort of boundaries, which is really exciting, and we get to see ways that materials are mixed differently, and we get to see colors and the way things are layered and the way just kind of we see some architectural shapes start to take form. And the great thing about that is we can take those and apply them to our design. So last year we saw during Fashion Week, menswear was a huge thing. And the way we applied that is we love the idea of taking that handsome, masculine, kind of traditional materials and putting them into our designs and seeing how they really create this cool traditional heritage. Or if we're starting to see, the pops of neon and color starting to come back. There's a huge movement in these crazy sleeves and crazy tops and crazy layers. So what are ways that we can create that kind of cool, memorable, that volume and the way that things are embellished in spaces? Of course, not avant-garde, but something again that feels cool and it's different. It's a little unexpected, even if it's just the way we see colors mashed up. Just for example, here where you see kind of that sage and that mustard. Those are things that start to show us some inspiration kind of moving forward.
Absolutely. And then another thing, going back to fashion, is, of course, this is from the runway, so it's very avant-garde and out there. But one thing to consider is, especially as fashion has changed so much over the last decade, it's become so much more casual with the rise of athleisure, and people are wearing their workout clothes to do whatever. And this is a huge macro trend in fashion. But we're going to be designing spaces for people. Like, what are people going to be wearing who are hanging out in our spaces? Just as an example, the way that people are so casual, but still nice. It's not like they're wearing, something that's super thrown together. It's casual, but it's still very curated. So we want them to feel comfortable in our spaces as well.
It helps you to understand what the type of sweater that you would feel comfortable on. We want to make sure that we're creating the space that someone like you, we're really looking at you, and we're making the space, for you. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so then we have our global aesthetic, and as Shay said before, we always are kind of looking globally at what's going on. And Australia lately has really been at the forefront. Some phenomenal designers, some phenomenal projects coming out of there. So really we love kind of looking back on there. We see some of those Nordic tones, really those biophilic palettes being really, really strong. And the way that they use curves and the way that they mix things in a very, very organic fashion, and the thoughtful, natural use of color. They're all things that really go on, to kind of inspire us. So again, we don't know everything, and, no one ever will, and that's the great thing about design is it's always growing and it's always changing. So we kind of, we always like to kind of look out at what's going on.
And then we always look at color. As we know, all of the paint companies come out with their colors for the year.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to kind of scroll through these quickly because we have several, but we're really seeing like the blues and the greens popping to the front, really a tie back to that whole idea of biophilia,
Absolutely.
returning to nature. A nod to wellness is something that's really strong throughout all of the colors. We're seeing kind of these ideas of hopefulness, the idea of slowing down and kind of unattaching from tech, putting your phone down.
Yeah, this one, that kind of reminds me, there was an article that I think we read earlier where they're looking to take these colors and apply them to technology.
Yes.
So that technology is so much softer, so that when you see a piece of technology, you're not, there's no aversion to it. It feels softer. It feels right.
Natural.
Exactly, because of these colors. So this whole biophilic palette that we're starting to see, we really feel is going to be kind of the way of the future.
The way forward,
again, color
sure.
is going to be very important, but really the way of the future and the way color is explored, is something super, super impactful.
Absolutely. And then also the colors this year are just launching us into the next decade. So 2020, like Alana said, we really think that this softening and this return to nature and softening tech is the way forward.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we're always looking at the cool new materials, too. We've seen a resurgence of terrazzo, which gets some of us super, super, super excited. It's such a cool material. We're starting to see this in also unique applications, everything from tabletops to counters and floors to backsplashes. Also, wood, as we talked before, those biophilic materials are so important. So you have your raw woods with your leathers, those mixed metals, where you have a really crisp, clean black metal juxtaposed with something a little bit raw with some of your wood. So we really like those layered natural materials. Also, we're starting to look at those biomaterials.
Yeah, this is an exciting one.
Super cool. We've actually seen the pendant fixtures that are made of mushrooms, coffee grinds. I mean, there's so many cool things really that are starting to hit the market. And this kind of goes back to what we were looking at, some of those top 5 things is creating for that end consumer who wants something that's sustainable, who wants something that feels like it's got some sort of cool root story, or it's a local material repurposed.
Absolutely. Again, you can see sustainability and the ideas of sustainability and biophilia are totally woven through the material trends going forward.
And this is our one to watch. We always like to kind of, we love to build our community, and we love to kind of share people who are doing really, really great work right now. So this is Brooke SPRECKMAN, and she works with Design Hutch, and we just really love the way she's kind of working right now. We love kind of keeping an eye out on what's going on. We love people that aren't doing what everyone's kind of doing. We really appreciate it. She's doing the Him and Hers headquarters. She's done a ton of work with Tender Greens. So again, we're really starting to look at, design in a whole new way. It's this really beautiful kind of growing community.
And then next, we have reusable and circular. This is just a huge trend that we're tracking. We know that zero waste has just exploded this year. Retailers are embracing this idea. We talked before about the reusable coffee cups and the to-go containers, but we're even seeing this idea in personal care products, like the bottom is deodorant. So you're using your deodorant, and the container you actually mail back, and then you receive a new one. So they're reusing, and we're really tracking this to see how we can bring this down into our design.
Absolutely. Is there a drop off in our post center? Like what is it? What do we feel people are going to use? What's worth the investment? We know in Denver that the vessel coffee cups, which is very similar to what we see here, that's taking off. So maybe it's just little things like that we're partnering with some of them, and then eventually we grow to have these kind of drop offs. But it is something to be really conscious of, because we probably are going to have in the future a lot of residents getting packages and shipping packages. So that pack and ship thing is probably going to be key important too, or even, the printer for your packages and things like that.
And then here, this is another global movement that we're following. So again, these global movements are things that we're seeing happening in the world. They're not quite at the point where we're directly designing to answer the question, but it's something that we're watching to see what happens next. So this idea of the dualistic citizenship, it's the idea that we all have so much information and we have access to global information and global products. We can order anything from anywhere in the world. But at the same time, on the other kind of swing of the pendulum, there's such a huge focus on local things that are locally sourced, hyper-local. So this contrast is really interesting. It's just something that we're watching to see what happens next, where will this go, and how can we potentially design for this in the future.
Yeah, Shay and I actually ran across a new word for us yesterday.
Just yesterday.
Yes, and it was
locavore.
Locavore. So essentially all you eat is local food, and we thought that was pretty interesting, but it kind of goes on to support this idea of this dualistic citizenship, but then that drive for that hyper-local was kind of different. It was just something new we hadn't heard of before. But again, it goes on to support kind of where we're going in the future.
Something to track. And then finally, we have this idea of rehumaning. So, we see kind of the cycle. There's so much technology. Our lives are so busy. Technology allows us to do more, and then we're doing more, and then we're more tired, and we're more busy. So we're all kind of trapped in this cycle right now, which wellness has been kind of the solution for, and we all know how huge the wellness industry is. As Alana and I have kind of talked through earlier, we're really seeing this change from wellness into the idea of holistic well-being. So now we're kind of seeing the next phase of that is this idea of, we're calling it rehumaning. So it's really getting back in touch with, people are really getting back in touch with the earth that we live on and the bodies that we live in. And doing things like going out in nature, being barefoot, doing dance and doing breath work, really getting back in touch with the body. So again, this is a huge kind of global thing that we're seeing happening. We're watching it to see how we can design for it in the future.
Absolutely.
As it trickles down.
As it brings itself forward. Looking at certain markets where something like this would be really beneficial, and do we have the landscape? Do we have the space for this? Can we do something like this? And it's a very, very unique thing that for the right kind of end user target audience, it's really, I think, going to be really super, super impactful. All right, and then we just have here our resources and references. So again, we do our market studies, we go beyond demographics, our market analytics, our industry partners, social media, and our exhibits. And then again, we've got our references here.
So we want to say thank you to everyone for taking the time to listen in on our webinar today. Again, if you joined us a little bit later, this was just a shortened version for presentation purposes, but our full digital version was sent out to you. So please feel free to reference back that for the entire Volume 19 Multifamily Trend Forecast. At this time, we're going to take a few minutes to answer some questions. So if you want to use the chat feature on Zoom and type anything in, we will be here hanging out a little bit longer to answer any questions.
Awesome. All right, Shay, we've got a few of them.
All right, cool.
I think one of a really good one I see here is, what are the biggest things that we are renovating? So I think this goes back to before when we talked a little bit about we're not creating these single-use spaces. Like the biggest thing we see when we go into a project that we're renovating we're not doing waiting rooms, we're not doing lobbies. Club rooms aren't really club rooms anymore, because what do you do in a club room? It's got to have a purpose. It's got to have a reason. There should be something to do there. Whether it's as simple as just like a board game sitting on a table, or if
activates it a little further.
Exactly. We always want to make sure our spaces are activated and animated. So those are the biggest things that we're changing. And again, we want our spaces to be purpose-driven, so it doesn't necessarily mean we're doing these huge things or we're changing them, but if we just give a purpose into a space, we've got something. We've got something we can kind of work with.
Right.
So I think that's something that's kind of good. You want to pick the next one?
Yeah. Okay, let's look. So we have one question here. What about demographics? So we started off talking about lifestyle segments. So we really look at, it's more of a psychographic approach than demographic approach. We know, of course, the importance of demographics, but we always try to take a look at the specific market that we're working in and really drill down into who is going to be living there. And we look at them not just based on their age, but based on their lifestyle attributes.
Absolutely. I think, like a millennial in one state may be completely different in another state. So, and I think this kind of ties into another question I see here that is awesome. Like, what are the resources that we use? And this is kind of a great segue to explain, like, you know, how we get some of that market research. So what we do is we do a deep, deep dive into the market and into the area, so we really, really get to know the potential residents.
Leverage social media. We're
Absolutely.
following hashtags, location tags.
What are the restaurants are going to?
What's being reposted the most?
Exactly. Is there a cool, you know, like Nashville, everyone knows about the wings, but we all know about it because we've all seen it on social media.
Right.
So that's something, you know, if you hadn't looked at it, you wouldn't know. So that's something we feel is, you know, social media is a very, very powerful thing. Let's see. All right, so where do we see sustainability going? All right, that's a good one. So we see sustainability kind of now as almost a standard.
Right.
You know, it's not this whole new thing that we want to make sure, oh, this should be sustainable. That should kind of be our base standard.
Yep.
Exactly, and everything that we're doing now is really, you know, the first focus should always be making sure that we're creating something that's good for the earth, and we're not going to make something that's, you know, harsh or we're doing the wrong thing.
Right.
But that's kind of understood now. We feel like in terms of forecasting, what we're seeing is, like you said, the rehumaning and the well-being really the core focus. Like, you know, we really want to address on the idea of how can we design to make a space better for the end user.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
and
a little bit
seeing
more personal.
this idea, yeah, absolutely. I love that, more personal. We're seeing this idea of sustainability. You kind of saw that it's just woven through our presentation. That's how we kind of approach it in our designs as well. It's woven through the overall design.
Absolutely. I think we have time for like two more.
Yeah,
do you want to do this one?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to ask you answer. What is the longevity on the things you are forecasting?
Okay, this is a good one.
That's a good one.
All right. Well, in our forecast, we always try to avoid these fast trends.
Mm-hmm.
So we're applying everything we put into our forecast into our projects, and we plan these projects to last for, 5 to 10 years with just
Absolutely.
a light refresh here and there, and in merchandising and paint and accessories. But we're really seeing these trends as something that's going to be, for sure, carry us into the next,
Absolutely.
through the next decade.
And I think one of the
approach
things too is
2020.
we don't ever want to ignore a trend.
No.
It's not to say we're going to paint a whole room the color of the year, just because again that dates itself really, really quickly. But paint is a very easy thing to change.
Yeah.
Art is an easy thing to change. Replacing a few pillows here and there is an easy thing to change. So small things like that are really cost effective, that's kind of where we're looking, where our strong kind of the walls we're building, the finishes we're putting in there, the purpose of the spaces.
We're not going to be tearing out tile.
Exactly.
Yep.
They're kind of, pretty steadfast and they're not going anywhere.
And that's actually the purpose behind our forecast too, to make sure that we are doing all of this research so that when we do install a project, we know that it's going to last.
Absolutely. All right.
Should we do one more?
Yeah, you want to pick it? All righty.
So this one, let's see. What are good ways to apply the idea of making a place local to a project?
That's a really, really good one, and it kind of goes on to support actually what I do a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we really we want to make sure that we're really looking into the history of the space and what is the purpose of the space and what founded it to begin with, and we see all these different people moving from new areas, and we want to make sure that the building we're creating feels locally rooted. Not to say that we're creating, a vintage building, because we're not. It's new. But pulling some of those ties back, for example, if we're in an industrial area, maybe we pull some of those dark metal, some of those raw finishes and things like that. We're not going to build a warehouse because we're not, but really paying homage to that and really taking notice of it. And
this ties into what you were saying too, what we were talking about with longevity. If it's locally rooted,
absolutely,
it's tied to the history, then it makes sense forever.
Absolutely. We would never design a space to have this really cool modern farmhouse in the middle of a city. It really wouldn't make sense because it's not what was there. However, if we look at an area that has really great agricultural roots, some of those biophilic colors are going to be really important, and that connection back to earth and agriculture. And I think we've always done some really kind of fun and funny stuff too, where we look at funny quotes at things that people have said, and even if it's as small as an art installation.
And even bringing these local businesses in to help further engage that idea helps to root the space and really engage the community in a building that is new.
Absolutely. You have art pop-ups, you have retail, we talked about the idea of integrating that retail and bringing vibrancy to the property. We've seen some of our projects where they're bringing in local makers and they're hosting events. So again, that's another way to really help people to plant plant their roots.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're at an hour. First of
Yes.
all, thank you
Thank you
everyone
so
for hanging with
much.
us. This is a new thing for us. I feel like
This
super
is our
exciting.
First
Yeah.
webinar. Thank you for participating.
Absolutely.
Taking the time
Of
to
course.
join us.
And if you have any follow-up questions or anything like that, please feel free to reach out to us, shoot us an email, and check out our forecast. And again, happy designing, everyone.
Yes.
Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you so much, everyone.